Pastor Apostle Harris, I'm so glad to have you here today.
It's a pleasure.
I long to meet you.
Yeah.
A wonderful history. I am so thrilled. You have so much to share. I'm especially interested, of course, in the past, but also the present and the future, your hopes and dreams. I'd like to know a little bit about how you affected a very important movement. I know your history comes very strong from the 60s.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I guess in the late 60s, I became involved with the school situation where my children were attending. They were in elementary school at that time, and there were a lot of inadequacies in the school. And I got together with the principal. Nothing seemed to happen. So eventually, I got together with some of the teachers, and we began to have meetings. And eventually, we had one big meeting. And at the meeting, there was a fellow that was appointed to be the chairperson. And when the meeting began, he froze. he couldn't speak.
Yes.
You know, he's a great big guy, you know, so they figured to have a militant guy, you know, this is the 60s. And he froze. So they said, well, we need somebody to speak. So I said, well, what do you have to do? They said, just tell what's going on. I said, well, I'll do that. You know? So I went out and I said what was going on. So newspaper reporters came up to me and they said, if the school doesn't meet your demands, what are you going to do? So we'll pick it, you know. They said, you will?
Right off the top of your head.
They said, when? I said, Monday, you know. So we started, and we started getting newspaper coverage. This had never happened in New Haven because it was supposed to be the model city of the world with Yale University and whatnot. And that's where a lot of your poverty programs and programs for communities started there.
Is that right?
So, and the mayor had been there for a long period of time, and he sort of kept everything under wraps, the churches, everything. So they had never had anything like this. And I had said that if you don't get rid of the principal, you know, we're going to pick it till we get a principal. It was an area that was in transition. It was becoming black and Puerto Rican. It had been predominantly white. So anyway, we were, after a couple of weeks, we were able to get the principal out and whatnot. And I began to get engagements to go around speaking. And I couldn't understand why I was getting engagements to speak, and I just go tell what happened. Oh, God, so a friend that I had met, he called me to the side. He says, Fred, don't you understand what's happening? I said, no. He says, you're naive. And I said, well, what does naive mean? So he told me. So he says, anytime someone is able to get a group of people and move them and their demands are met, that's power.
Yes, it is.
That's right. And then we formed this organization. We began to go from one situation, welfare rights and all this kind of stuff. We organized a statewide march. That was the first, I got arrested at that march. I had my head busted open. It's a good thing I had a big afro and handcuffed and blood in my eyes and all this, because I was the leader of this the organization, but also the organizing. And I wasn't really the main leader, but I was cited by the power structure as the main leader. And I was facing 25 years for inciting a riot and all this kind of stuff, which eventually was dropped.
This is about the same time as the movement, the Black Power movement, was starting in New York and around. So I guess they were spotting hot spots throughout the United States. Yeah.
And New Haven couldn't stand the embarrassment. New Haven was the first city, and the mayor there was the first mayor to get involved with a major university to help attract federal dollars and all this kind of stuff and come up with innovative new programs that were supposedly to be involving and including the community on a level where they had an input and voice, which really was not true, and they utilized the money for political patronage and things of that nature.
Really?
So they began to really converge on me and our organization. We'd get arrested and just all kinds of things.
So you became a voice kind of for the black people, or just people on the whole?
Well, I guess you would say poor people to a degree, because our organization consisted of Puerto Ricans, blacks, and whites. The problem was that the existing organizations like the NAACP and different organizations like that, the mayor pretty much had them under control. And a lot of these people were looking for, they had other aspirations in politics and this and that, and they did the best they could, but he could he controlled their purse strings and this and that, whereas me, I didn't have any aspirations, really.
Yes.
You know, I got involved because of my children, and I said, if anything, I'm going to always do my best for my children, because my parents, they didn't attend PTA meetings, and they had all kind of other problems. So this is one thing that I had.
So out of this humble base, you became a leader of one of the most powerful movements in the world out of this. Had Christ moved in your life at this point?
No, I prayed.
Yes.
I prayed. One of the things, it was one of the most scariest times of my life, because the police are supposed to protect you, but when the powers that be that are supposed to protect you are trying to kill you or remove you, then who do you go to?
Yes.
You know, you have no one to really go to. And it was very frightening. I prayed the way I knew. I had grown up Catholic. I had been an altar boy and different things like that, but as far as being born again and things like that, I had no understanding about what that was.
See, that interests me, because when a person like you're saying you had no ambition to become a leader, and you were put in a position actually to start speaking out and representing people like that, how did that feel from, you know, within yourself, and knowing you in a society, in an environment where almost anything can happen to you? You know, what were your feelings at that time about what was happening around you, and taking such a stand to speak out? And
I did, first of all, I didn't want to be a leader. Secondly, I didn't like speaking up because basically I'm kind of quiet, somewhat shy.
Okay.
But the circumstances and the different events that were going on would spark me, and I'd get angry, I'd cuss, I'd do whatever I needed to do, you know.
Yes, yes.
And to deal with the situation, because I was the leader and I'm supposed to do this and I have to do this, you know, and it would drive me. I'd always say, are you willing to kill? And I'd say, yeah. Are you willing to die? I'd say, yeah. And then I'd just go. Whatever I felt I needed to do, I'd do it, you know.
Yeah.
But I didn't like living like that because it caused me to be a way that wasn't really, at least I didn't see that as my personality.
At what point would you say, was it after the 60s or after the movement had been pretty well put under wraps, that Christ called you out and consciously healed you?
I had, during this period of time, I was a heroin addict. I had been on some type of substance, I guess, since I was around 6 or 7. I drank. I came from a very troubled home. And also I had tremendous problems with self-esteem. I felt the problems in my home were my fault because I knew I was no good, I wasn't worth nothing. I always felt that. No matter what I accomplished in school or in other events outside of school, sports and different things, if I was brought up to get an award, I'd feel like they need to hurry up and get finished before people will be able to look and see that I'm not worth anything, I'm not any good. Now, I never had no one saying that to me, but it was in me, it always was there. And so anyway, I guess by drinking, I started drinking around 6 or 7. My parents had alcohol and stuff around, and I drink it. And by the time I was 12 or 13, I pretty much was a functional alcoholic. I drank on the weekends and whatnot, and now I'm 63 years old, so this is a while back, and people at that back then at that early age didn't drink it. I was the only one that did with my group, you know. So I guess I was an alcoholic. Then by the time I got 13, I started smoking grass. Eventually, I started shooting heroin. But what it did was it would push down the self-hurt, the pain, feeling like a failure, no hope. But I didn't understand that's what was going on inside of me. So it was like medication. I'd medicate myself. I didn't hold up people. I didn't steal from people. And I was always working and had responsible jobs and all this kind of stuff. But I began to come to the end of myself, and I was working for a drug program, although I was on drugs, in Massachusetts, and I got into some problems there with getting involved with some of the women in the program. And I had previously